Okay, so the next item, if I go on the clicker, is Minister Claire Coutinho. She's in the room. She's been in the room for a little while. We snuck her in when everybody was busy. Minister, would you like to come up and do your speech? Thank you. Yeah, in a second.
Thank you very much. It's been wonderful to be here listening to some of that, and I hope you've had an enjoyable conference. I'd like to start by thanking the truly brilliant Tina and Marunal for inviting me here. It's been an absolute privilege to work with you, and I hope that you sort of see all that reflected in the upcoming improvement plan. I represent a seat which actually has had one of the highest rises of EHCPs, because I represent a seat in Surrey. So about a third of my surgeries, which I do on a sort of weekly, fortnightly basis for the last 3 or 4 years, has been talking to families and parents of children with SEN needs. So it's a huge privilege to be here with you. And I want to start by saying that I am particularly passionate about supporting parents through the education system. Before I became the minister in this Department for Education, I was actually writing a report with another MP on parenting, because I think it is so important. I think the last few years have been so challenging. And I know that parents know that children only get one shot at education, and it has an enormous impact on their ability to get on in life. So I personally believe that the single biggest creative force that we have in society is parents' love and dedication for their children and their desire for them to do well. And that's what I'm committed to supporting and working with you on, to improve the education system for your children. Before I talk about our plans for the future, I wanted to acknowledge just how difficult the pandemic has been. I know that everyone's grappling with rising inflation, energy costs, and actually some of those stress moments, I think, during the pandemic for all parents were particularly tough for parents of children with SEN, and particularly I think going back into the school system as well has been extremely challenging. So I wanted to recognise your incredible resilience and pay tribute to the amazing contributions that you've all made through the parent-carer forums. I think one of the things that we've heard a lot, and you'll have seen in the Green Paper, was how tired I think parents and carers are of navigating a really complicated system that isn't responding enough. They may have been, and I've heard this a lot in sort of my conversations with parents and families, they may have been chasing their council for months to get the right support plan in place. They may be facing really long wait times for therapies, or battling to get reasonable adjustments, as I know we've just been hearing quite a lot about made at school. Some of the parents that I've met can weigh the paperwork relating to their child by the kilo. You and your children deserve better, and it's now time to make sure we've got a system that works for you. The first step of this will be the publication of the Send an Alternative Provision Improvement Plan, which will be published within the next week. This is a joint plan that we're working on between the Department for Education, the Department for Health and Social Care. I know we were also hearing a little bit just then about how the link up between the two is absolutely crucial. The plan has been produced in response to the feedback we heard during the consultation, especially that from children, young people, and their families. So I'd like to thank all of you. I'm sure some of you in this room have done this, who gave up your time to talk to us. And our mission is threefold. We want to ensure that every child and young person can enjoy their childhood and feel prepared for adulthood and employment. We know the system has lost the confidence of parents, and we need to regain that trust by improving the support that is ordinarily available. And we have increased the high needs budget by over 50% in the last 4 years, which is more than almost any other area of government. But we need to make sure the funding is being spent well and people are feeling that on the ground. A good education sets children up to achieve their goals. The improvement plan will set out a clear vision for a more inclusive society, something I'm particularly passionate about, as prior to this role I was the Minister for Disabled People, so I saw some of these challenges from the adult side as well, that celebrates, enables success in a variety of forms, and it will set out our plans for a single national system that delivers for every child and young person with SEND or attending alternative provision, so that they can get those good outcomes that we want. To deliver this, we want children and young people across the country to be able to access the right education and support quickly, whether that's in a truly inclusive mainstream, and I was visiting one just this morning, or specialist provision. We know that the system needs more consistency, so that similar needs are met equally effectively, no matter which school you attend, where you live, or what your family background is. We'll be announcing plans for developing national standards with partners across education, health, and care, so that everyone is clear about what should be available. Thank you again for all the thoughts that you've been sharing with us today about how national standards can take shape, and I know that the department said they're going to come back to you with their reflections on what they've heard. The improvement plan will confirm our attention that new local SEND and alternative provision partnerships will create evidence-based local inclusion plans, setting out how the needs of children and young people should be met in a local area. And parent-carer forums will have a key role in working with local partnerships to shape those plans. We will hopefully give families greater confidence that their child will be supported to fulfill their potential through improved mainstream provision in their local setting. For children and young people with SEND who do require an EHCP or specialist provision, we want to see prompt access to the support they need within a less adversarial system. And as part of this work, parents and carers will play a crucial role in helping us to improve the quality and consistency of those plans. I appreciate how crucial it is to have the right school places in your child's local area, and we're investing £2.6 billion to make sure that we can increase the capacity for specialist and AP provision and allow existing settings to build on their excellent support. We're also going to announce a new approach to alternative provision, so it's used more as an intervention as opposed to a destination for young people, so that they can stay in or return quickly to mainstream where suitable. But it's not just about providing the right education. We also need to support the health and well-being of our children. We know from recent research that more children with SEN have lower scores for happiness with school compared to children without SEN, and that's just not good enough. So it'll be vital that the National SEND and Alternative Provision System brings together partners from across education, health and care to provide timely access to specialist support, including mental health support, something that I'm very passionate about. As well as responsibility for SEND and alternative provision, I'm also the Minister responsible for children's social care. So a few weeks ago, I launched Stable Homes Built on Love, an implementation strategy and consultation which sets up our plans to transform children's social care. We've worked really closely to ensure that these two reforms work closely together and put families at the heart of the system of help and support. The improvement plan will also recognise that achieving our mission relies on supporting the dedicated teachers, teaching assistants, early years staff, health professionals, and support workers who do amazing work. For example, we're providing free SEND-specific professional development, online training, live webinars, and peer mentoring opportunities to school and college staff at any stage in their career through the Universal Services Programme. And also we're investing £21 million in training more educational psychologists. I know it's been enormously hard to get hold of one, and that earlier diagnosis is crucial to making sure that children can have that better chance of being well supported within mainstream education as well. So we're working jointly, as I said before, with health, and we will be setting out a joint approach on SEND workforce planning, because we know health professionals are so key in all of this. I've often heard from families about the difficulty of children and young people facing that transition when they're moving between different settings and phases. So I really want to make sure that children and young people are supported to achieve their potential as they progress through their education and into adult life. And so to achieve this, we're also going to produce guidance that will support successful transitions, be that from primary to secondary, from post-16 education or training into employment or adult services. And to support young people into employment, we're investing £18 million to double the capacity of the supported internships programs, which will continue to work with the Department for Work and Pension on the introduction of adjustment passports so that employers know what support young people require. One of the things that I see when I talk to families and young people is getting that adjustment right can be great, but then when you go into your next stage in life, if it doesn't follow with you, it can be such a big setback. So I want that to travel with people. We've heard loud and clearly during the consultation that stronger accountability is needed in the system, with swifter redress where things go wrong. The department will have a role in reviewing the new local inclusion plans, which is all parts of the system coming together, and we will not hesitate to challenge where necessary. New Ofsted and Care Quality Commission area SEND inspections launched in January this year have a greater focus on the real outcomes and experiences of children with SEND and an alternative provision, providing more nuanced judgments for areas to inform the department's response in local areas. And so that SEND casework service from councils is more responsive and supportive, we'll include guidance on this in our amended code of practice. And I don't know about you guys, but this is something that a lot of my parents and families complain the most about, is that they just can't get a response. And actually, if they just knew what was going on, it would be so much easier to deal with things. Alongside strengthened accountability, we need to deliver more coherent complaint processes for when things do go wrong as well. We know the system faces immediate challenges, and we are going to progress with reforms where we can absolutely straight away. And as part of our aim for a financially sustainable system, we want to address financial pressures that have a daily impact on children and young people. So £400 million of the additional schools funding announced at the autumn statement will go directly towards SEND and alternative provision. And next year, the department's total funding for high needs will exceed £10 billion for the first time. And we're also going to use £70 million investment into a change programme to develop, design and test some of these key reforms in some local areas. And of course, it is crucial to us that parents and carers such as yourself are involved in this work to ensure that any changes do not create unintended consequences. So thank you again for all of the work that you do in your local forums and also in the NNPCF. It is so critical to us to get this right. And at a local and national level, you are truly, truly valued partners. I know how important a role parent-carer forums play in improving services in the here and now. Where you are at the table in your local areas, we see practices much closer to the aspirations that we have for the whole system. There's no doubt in my mind about how significant your involvement will be in delivering reform in the future as well. And so I just wanted to end by saying I'm completely committed to getting this right and to continuing to listen to the experience of parents as we develop the detail of our plans. I'm pleased that the publication will be in the next week or so we can move on to the next stage in delivering the improvements that you have told us that you really need. Thank you so much, and I look forward to working with you all.
So we're just going to have a little bit of a chat. Hopefully we'll ask some questions just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better, because Muriel and I are at a slight advantage because we've met you more than once, and some of the steering group members have also met with you. So I just wanted to ask you just a few questions. So obviously, great speech. Thank you very much for coming. I know you were in the area and you've gone to a few schools as well today. But I just wanted to ask a few questions, really to sort of clarify your speech a little bit. So obviously there's been lots of concerns about national standards, taken away from the requirement to meet individual needs. It's certainly something Marunal touched on earlier with his presentation. Can you reassure parents that the national standards will not prescribe specific treatments or support for specific conditions, or will not effectively cap the services that are available to children and young people? Can you confirm that the requirement to meet individual needs will remain?
Absolutely, I can. So you shouldn't think of national standards as a maximum standards. It's almost more like a minimum standards, because what's happening at the moment is you have such a huge level of inconsistency between different settings. And what we want to do is bring together all the best evidence, which means that you'll have a much clearer sense of what you can expect from a school. And also for schools or early years or colleges, because it will apply to everything, they'll also have a better sense of what they can do. And I think we just want to inject that confidence in the system. But of course, there'll be space to have conversations with all of those settings about particular flexibilities that you need. One of the things that we do know in this area is that flexibility is important. So of course we'll make that clear, and you shouldn't see it at all as that this will be the cap. This is just trying to bring together what good looks like so we can improve that consistency across the country.
Thank you. So you mentioned that outcomes for children and young people are important. How can we make sure that the support for these children and young people is at the right time?
So I think there's a few things here. Firstly, early identification is really key. So we'll be training, for example, Senkos in the early years. So just at that very earliest stage, we've got better people who can spot sort of early signs of what's going on. but also generally teacher training. So we're looking at the initial teacher training and early careers framework, so teachers are more equipped as well, and setting out best practice guides. So I think the three that we're going to start with are autism, mental health and well-being, and what's my third one? Speech and language as well, because we know speech and language has been a challenge after the pandemic. But the whole point is trying to make sure that people can identify as early as possible and then are equipped to be able to provide that support that people need. So what was the end of your question?
So how can we make sure that it's at the right time?
Is at the right time? So I think that's the first part. The second part that I would say is getting the right workforce. So we know that sort of specialist workforces have huge waiting times, and one of the things that we're working on, which I think will help in this area, is this joint workforce strategy with the health department, because actually being able to get that specialist support means that we need to be able to know what needs are building in different areas, and we can put that training and workforce in place again early on so that those needs can be met.
Thank you. So the government is sending clear message about accountability and how can we ensure that parent carers and the families understand what that means, and how we can make sure that they will be able to seek this easily, especially if reasonable adjustments in schools are not being made.
So firstly, on reasonable adjustments, that's something we talked about actually last time that I was talking to Maria and Tina about, and I really want us to publish a list of what some reasonable adjustments are so that schools can, again, be more confident about this. And hopefully I want to do that in the next couple of weeks. And if I say that now, maybe they'll let me do it in the next 2 weeks. But I think that's really important to be able to set that out. And where you feel like you're not getting those things, we need to be clearer, and that's what we're going to do in terms of setting out what the routes for redress are. But I would also say one of the things which is really important is that we've changed the Ofsted framework for schools so that if you want to be good or outstanding as a school, you have to show good outcomes for SEN children. And what we're trying to do with the whole strategy is make sure that inclusivity is driven into the whole excellence of our entire education system. So whether you are the college or the early years or the school, setting out these standards, setting out local inclusion plans so that every part of the system is working together, is trying to make sure that we can do that so everyone is striving for inclusivity and to make reasonable adjustments so we can get those outcomes.
Thank you. And there's lots of chatter around financial sustainability. You touched on it in your speech, actually, about the amount of money that's gone into the system, and yet outcomes for children and young people are not where they need to be. And how can we make sure that we also co-produce these improvement programmes like DBVS and Safety Valve? Lots of forums that are involved in Safety Valve are not really involved in it. It's been done behind closed doors, and local areas are also saying this. So how can we make sure that PCFs are involved with these improvement programmes like DBVS and Safety Valve at the earliest point?
Well, I mean, what we want to do across the piece is involve parent carers. So when we're talking about national standards, one of the things we'll be doing at the earliest point this year is a steering group with parent and carers. Before we even decide which of the first standards we're going to focus on, we want to bring parents in at that earliest stage, and that's what we should be doing with all of these things. As I said, every time we've sort of involved parents, and I see this from my side as a constituency MP, every time you involve parents and talk to parents, they've got a really clear idea, often sometimes better than the system, of what is a good idea in terms of working with children and families. So that's what we want to do. And when it comes to financial sustainability, all I would say is this is not an area that we are trying to take resources away from. We've actually massively increased them over the last few years. So the high needs budget up by 50%, but also schools, we're putting in an extra £2 billion in the next year and the year after, which will take it to real-term historic highs. This is not an area that we're afraid of spending money on. We just want to make sure that it's being spent well. And I think one of the challenges at the moment is you can talk to some parents and families who are getting, a great support, but some who just sort of can't even get their foot in the door. And I think what we want to make sure is that every child who's got a need, at 16.5% of the pupil population now, that they're all able to get the support that they need.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you very much for your speech. We're going to go on to our next item in a minute, but thank you again, and please.
My huge pleasure, and I'll be sticking around for a bit, and so if anyone wants to come and talk to me, please do. Thank you.